One of these days, we'll be able to move on from talking about storefronts and marketplaces and actually go back to discussing games, but not this day. Epic have been encroaching on Steam's turf for quite a while now in an endlessly mistake-laden bumble into relevance, but for some reason, they also seem to have made the mistake of thinking that Steam would just roll over and die. That may not be the case. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Industry Report, the series where we shine a spotlight on the biggest stories of the week and try to work out what's going on. Before we get going, please be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell to let YouTube know that you enjoy our content. It really does help us out. And with that said, let's get going. Steam have taken their first real move against Epic, but first, a little bit of context. In an interview that Kotaku released last week, Steam business developer and designer Nathaniel Blue revealed that Valve have intentionally been keeping quiet on losing titles to the Epic Games Store's quest of, getting more exclusives. Now, according to Blue, this decision was made in the wake of the vitriol that was hurled at developer 4A Games following Metro Exodus' removal from Steam earlier this year. Of course, that was a decision made by the publisher, not by the developer. The game's relocation to Epic prompted a, passionate reaction from players, and even the Metro series of books author took some flack there. Now, at the same time, Valve made a statement saying that Epic's move was an unfair one. Now, this brought a lot of people to Valve's side, and it added a real element of legitimacy to the backlash, which Blue confirms Steam later regretted because Steam saw their statement as being a little bit of a lightning rod. And that explains why in the time since the Metro incident, Valve have opted to stay silent on the topic of new Epic Games Store exclusives such as Borderlands 3 and Shenmue 3. Whatever criticism can be leveled at Epic for the shambolic state of its marketplace, the improved financial terms, of course, of the Epic Store, they have been a succeeding strategy in bringing in the exclusives. This is a strategy that Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney has claimed is, quote, the only way to challenge Steam. Despite displaying an alarming lack of creative ambition for a CEO, Sweeney may have a bit of a point in that exclusives certainly are a way to challenge Steam. The Epic Games Store, of course, offers developers an 88% share of revenue. They also will waive the Unreal Engine licensing fee if that engine is being used. Now, that, of course, dwarfs Steam's 70%. Plus, and I think far more importantly, Epic guarantee a minimum number of sales. Now, this number apparently changes from developer to developer, but it's apparently so much money that it basically would be foolish to turn it down. And in some cases, actually, Epic have basically been offering the total expected sales for a game across all platforms over a good period of time just up front as a big sack of cash. So that's why they've been so successful in getting people in. But that might change. When it comes to Steam, silence certainly is not the same as submission. While a lot of people have viewed Valve's silence as, niceness verging on acquiescence, it's inevitable that Steam would retaliate, and that is happening. Over the weekend, it was revealed that Steam would be altering the terms of their distribution agreement in order to guarantee that developers either release their games on Steam alongside all other PC platforms, or not release their game on Steam at all. The updated section reads that developers, quote, shall submit the application to Steam for reference no later than the first commercial release of each application or localized version, or if already commercially released as of the effective date, within 30 days of the effective date. Now, that's a wordy statement, but basically it boils down to the fact that if developers wish to release their game in Steam, they are required to do so within 30 days of its release on other PC storefronts. This, of course, led to many strange situations for Valve. One of their problems, one of the many ones, was that certain devs were still continuing to use the Steam forums to communicate with their player base even after their game had become a timed Epic exclusive. Now, in addition to basically being an abuse of Steam's significant traffic numbers and its user base, it's also a pretty embarrassing indictment of the state of Epic's store. After all, why don't developers with Epic exclusive games not use the Epic Games Store forums in order to communicate with their player base to share news and updates? Oh, yeah, it's because the Epic Store doesn't have forums or a shopping cart, but let's not get started on that one again. Steam's new updated contract terms will now require a concurrent PC release across all platforms, but this is more than just an attempt by Steam to limit Epic's influence over developers in terms of wrangling exclusives. It's also a potentially wide-reaching statement that developers will have to carefully consider entering an exclusivity relationship with any storefront. Under these terms, developers will no longer have the option of entering into an exclusive partnership partnership with the Epic Game Store, even on a timed basis. Now, this has been a popular thing for studios and their dealings with Epic. We've got games like Borderlands 3, who opted to be an exclusive on the Epic Store for the first few months and then hit Steam afterwards. Indeed, Borderlands 3 is due for release on Steam March 2020 after dropping on the Epic Store. This move by Steam, of course, kills the idea of a timed exclusive for the Epic Store and effectively removes a developer's ability to double dip for their title when it comes to releasing on different marketplaces. And I suppose this could also potentially include things like being snapped up just by any other platform holder, even if it was something like, say, Apple Arcade. Now, under the new distribution terms, an Epic Store exclusive will remain an Epic Store exclusive seemingly forever, while any developer releasing a game on Steam will not be able to enjoy any of the benefits of an exclusive partnership with any other marketplace. Steam clearly wants developers to go all in or all out and will no longer tolerate anything in between. Now, there are a couple of ways that this could go for Steam. The first is that it manages to, cripple the Epic Game Store a bit and to remove its ability to lobby for exclusive titles with developers, even with its improved terms for remuneration. This would effectively block it from challenging Steam in the way that CEO Tim Sweeney envisioned. Put simply, without exclusives, the Epic Game Store pretty much has nothing to bring to players, and for the people who are already there because of the exclusives, well, it's not like they're there because they enjoy the store. Fundamentally, Steam have built a product that people enjoy using, and that's one of the core differences. Moving on, the Twitter user who initially shared the updated terms of distribution went on to allege that Epic was working with Steam Spy in order to access which games were generating the most traffic on Steam. They supposedly would use those details to inform which titles they were going to pursue as exclusives. That's very unconfirmed, though. It's very speculative. If true, though, that strategy kind of just went out the window for Epic, as any games with a Steam page would now be required to release on Steam or be in breach of that contract. Now, there is also a way that this could backfire on Steam. So whenever people think of PC digital distribution, they think of Steam. But if Valve forced developers to choose and developers ended up being snapped up by Epic, it would kind of break that link where people just think, oh yeah, PC equals Steam. And that could just be a sort of like a soft power loss, a perception loss for Steam. But to be honest with you, I don't think that's the way that it's actually going to play out here. Now, it's important to remember that Valve have not increased the financial split with these new distribution terms. Developers are still going to be getting 70% of the revenue, assuming they're in the sales bracket that almost all indies will fall in. And that's, less than the 88% offered by Epic. But of course, now they're going to be sort of forced in with this now or never timeframe because of the new distribution agreement. Now, this is fine for AA developers or AAA who are kind of guaranteed sales regardless of the platform in the marketplace. It's also fine for people who will sell enough games that they can move into the 25 and 20% revenue splits, but it could be a bit more challenging for indie developers with fewer financial resources. These changes will require indie developers to choose between the increased earning potential associated with Epic Games Store, plus its guaranteed minimum sales if an exclusivity deal is reached, and the increased store functionalities and web traffic that is offered by Steam. So that's certainly quite the choice to be made. Now, if Steam aren't careful, the numbers may not work out in their favor. This could see droves of indie developers flocking to the Epic Games Store and other marketplaces in search of better financial terms for their future projects, and that could leave Steam in a bit of a funny position, maybe more being AAA blockbusters and little else, which really doesn't gel with their emphasis on diversity and variety on their platform. This is likely going to be something that will vary, though, on a game-by-game basis. I think that a lot of the super premium artsy indies for whom sales may be a struggle, but they have a real good quality product, I think Epic might actually work better there, as Epic would kind of, they'd have a real platform seller in having a unique game like that being their platform, a bit like how Apple would, promote Monument Valley. However, for more mechanics-focused games like your Stardew Valley, things like that, or games made by developers who have a captive audience, I think Steam still will be the go-to route. Still, such a scenario would require a massive culture shift, while Epic is the butt of so many jokes, and I don't think that's likely. If Valve forced developers to make a decision, and Epic have this terrible, terrible reputation, then I think developers may just stick with Valve. I think this move from Valve only makes sense given Epic's terrible public relations, and I think Valve very much know that. Even a PR disaster for Steam would unlikely turn people off the platform, as so many players are just unwilling to accept the Epic Store as a viable alternative until it stops being a barely functional mess and improves its business model in the eyes of consumers. The new contract changes do really highlight Steam's overwhelmingly numerous player base as a real prize for developers, and it lays down a foreboding black and white white kind of decision as to what developers can really just choose between, what they'll give up if they end up going onto Epic's rather misbuilt ship. Now, there is one thing I do think I should add in here. Yes, it's really fun to see Valve kind of strike back at Epic, and this absolutely does feel like a very targeted thing to prevent the Metro-like situations, but if you actually read the text, yeah, it is extremely broad, and there are some ways in which it is a little bit, unreasonable / unprecedented. Demanding release, launch parity, that's not really a normal thing for a storefront to do. And indeed, times where it is done, that'll be, in a situation like, say, with, getting a launch parity on a PlayStation, right, with Steam, Sony would give you a spot in a trailer. There would be promotion there, basically. So for something like this to be a default, it is just worth pointing out that's very odd. It's pretty unprecedented. It's not really a normal thing. Now, the letter here of this is vague to the point where, technically, if a developer released their game in itch.io, they would not be able to put it on Steam. Now, it very much seems like this is just a vague statement that Valve kind of have done in their back pocket, such that if they want to reject a game, they are able to do so. So it seems like that'll be a little bit more targeted towards Epic, but it is just worth kind of providing a little bit of a counterpoint here that, yeah, what Valve are kind of asking for here, it's not what GOG would ask for, it's not what Humble would ask for, and there are lots of times where, say, with a Humble original, where, yeah, maybe, Humble sort of develop or really do fund the development of a game themselves, and the game comes out. Yeah, it would be a bit wild if, it could not go on Steam after that. So, a strange situation, because I think we can all agree that if Epic are to fund a game from start to finish and have it be exclusive in their store, I think that's fine. That's what, just about every publisher with their own storefront does, at least many of them. But for that to not go on Steam, not really particularly great. Now, across the story, I think what's universal is the loss to players. As attractive as exclusivity deals are for developers and the storefronts executing them, and even what Valve are doing here, it doesn't change the fact that it is a pretty anti-consumer feeling practice. It's not good for, consumer choice in relation to the product in question. Really, I think gaming should be about the games. It shouldn't be about the storefronts. I think the current situation is just a real pain for all of us, and Epic's dedication to holding titles like Borderlands 3 kind of hostage, it just does little but demonstrate the same kind of flagrant contempt for audiences that's kind of hung around since the brilliant marketing genius that first came up with the term console wars. Very much not ideal. Anyway, do let me know what you think about this story down below. Where do you think indie devs will go? Who do you think will win? Do you support Valve being just a little bit more harsh with this? I'd love to hear down below. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.